Hello and welcome to Our Experts Podcast. I am Carol Matichka, your host, bringing you fascinating perspectives from the world and realm of pharmacy.
Welcome, listeners. So today we have with us Dr. Aneesh Lakhani, the independent pharmacy owner, FPA president, and really a true champion for pharmacy. So thank you and welcome, Dr. Lakhani.
Good morning, Carol. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast today. I'm super excited to be here. I'm a big fan of the podcast. I've listened to several of your episodes, and I think it's great what you're doing here, giving your listeners an opportunity to hear from different walks of pharmacy and different leaders and kind of get a different perspective from everybody.
Well, we couldn't be more thankful that you're here. I mean, everybody wants to hear from our leaders and really want to hear your thoughts, and they really enjoy it. So we just appreciate because we know how busy you are. It's a super busy time for you. So tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you become a pharmacist?
So I'll tell you a little bit about myself personally first. I was originally from Chicago, and my family really didn't like the cold weather, so we decided to pick up and move to sunny South Florida about 40 years ago. So that's where I grew up in the South Florida area. And fast forward to today, I have a wife who's also a pharmacist. I have two boys, Devin and Dylan, 15 and 12 years old. So we have a busy life, busy household going on. As far as pharmacy, how did I come into pharmacy? I started working at a Walgreens pharmacy when I was 15 years old. Actually,
Oh, wow.
I was a stock boy in the aisles, and
So you were your boy's age at that time.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
Wow.
Like,
Yeah.
not to him not about that now. I talked to him about getting a job. This is when I started. So, when I was 15 years old, I was in the Walgreens and I was just stocking the shelves when someone, lo and behold, had called out sick that day. And this was before now, where there's a lot of regulations where you had to be licensed to work in the pharmacy and whatnot. So they just pulled me off the floor and said, "Hey, we need some help." So ever since then, I've always been in pharmacy. I love pharmacy. That particular Walgreens store was where I met one of my mentors. Her name is Barbara Samarco. She was the pharmacy manager at that store, and she took me under her wing. She showed me the ropes of pharmacy. I was able to see what really, fascinated me was the relationship building that she had there. It was customers that would always come in, always ask for her, and they would, go over all their health concerns. And it was just customer after customer who just would call and want to speak to this pharmacist and, get their healthcare advice from the pharmacist. So that was something that really intrigued me, and that's what, kind of really got me into pharmacy. You know, um, Something that I always enjoyed was that building relationships, the relationship building. And I thought that, there was no other better way to, entrench yourself in the community than be able to build those relationships with your patients.
I 100% agree, and it's interesting because my dad was a pharmacist. He'll always be a pharmacist to me, but till 80 years old, and he worked in some different independents. He also worked at Eckerd's, if everybody remembers Eckerd's. But seeing him in Eckerd Drugs when I was a little kid, like, he loved talking to people, and I
Yeah.
think that's the thing about pharmacy is that we are just able to really get to know and connect with the community, and I love that,
Yeah.
and that's what excited me too, um, so when did owning a pharmacy really become a goal of yours? And very successful, by the way. So how did you really succeed in that vision?
So ownership really, became a goal once I realized that, the independent pharmacy kind of gave me the freedom to actually practice the way I wanted to. Although I loved my training at the chain store, you were still restricted on how you could practice, how you could implement programs, things like that. So I wanted to spend my time with patients instead of racing through a queue and having metrics and where, the phone logs and things like that. So I took over garden drugs and medical supply, and we kind of focused on, a lot of the services, that the chains not didn't necessarily offer at the time. I got involved with personalized counseling. I was involved in a lot of vitamin and nutritional consults. I did bioidentical hormone consults. So I would really delve into different things that you wouldn't get necessarily at your regular community pharmacy. I started practicing with immunizations, and then getting more into test and treat and all the every time that there's something new that lets us, practice to the highest level of our license, it's something that I love to implement. And it doesn't necessarily, a lot of times when you're dealing with the corporate world, a lot of stuff has to kind of have to reach different metrics to be able to, has to be able to be monetized to be able to implement programs. Or on this, aspect, when you own your own store, you can kind of implement things, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the biggest money makers. It's just what's best for your patients and what's best for your community. So I think when you own an independent store, you have the opportunity to pivot much more, freely and implement your ideas.
That's a great point, and, if something doesn't work, you can just try it another way or try something else, and, I really like that. And that's something good for we get students who listen as well, for them as they're thinking through what do they wanna do, and I really encourage them to think about potentially independent pharmacy ownership too for these many reasons, but,
Yeah, absolutely.
um so I know this wasn't one of the questions I was originally gonna ask, but, um, do you still feel like, though, having that, chain community, background really helped? Do you advise maybe students to go that route first for a bit before they jump right into independent ownership, or what are your thoughts there?
So yeah, there's two different avenues there for sure. I mean, any experience you get in the community world, I think, is helpful. I mean, it's helped me, understanding that process. And actually, it helps me now with my leadership role, and understanding what the community pharmacists are going through that work for change. So I think it's always a good opportunity to, get an experience of, what other pharmacists are going through, what other technicians are going through that work in that space. Particularly, I would recommend, because what I did end up doing after my Walgreens time had ended, I moved on to an independent pharmacy, or I worked at an independent pharmacy for another independent owner for several years, and that time was completely invaluable. I mean, it was just unbelievable, like, the experience that you learn working under the tutelage of a different owner and kinda getting to see the ins and outs before you purchase your own. So that absolutely I recommend. I hear about people that kind of go in cold and just right out of school go and open their own pharmacy. To me, that's a little daunting. I would love to see somebody get some more experience and, really make sure you're primed and ready before you go after it on your own. But I definitely would recommend getting some experience at a local independent pharmacy near you.
Yeah. But some people are very adventurous though, and maybe they get enough experience. I know a couple of pharmacists who did that, and they were, grads from here, right out of school, but they had been working there before and, you know, but definitely adventurous, I will say that.
Yeah.
So thank you for providing your precious time, really leading one of our major state organizations. We have 2 major state organizations, FPA being the oldest and the longest surviving, I would say, really has so much amazing history. So can you give the listeners some updates on the FPA and really what's your vision for this organization?
Sure. I mean, it's a huge honor for me to lead the FPA right now. Where pharmacy is in such a transitional period right now, where we're trying to do so many different things, and it's a great time to lead. My goal is to leave this association better than where I found it, and I think we're primed to do that this year. My mission kind of tagline for this year is going to be one profession, one voice. So it really encompasses that, we all have to work together. I think over the years, pharmacy has been kind of put into these different silos where people are focused on their particular niche or their particular stakehold in pharmacy, where we really need to focus as one. I think,
Right.
a lot of pharmacy has kind of, we've been put on the back burner because of the fact that we weren't, coming forward as a united front. So I think that that really is the message going forward. I think, a lot of these states, if you speak about legislatively and the people that are getting things done, are states where the pharmacy fronts are united, where everybody is working together. So, this year my vision is going to focus on three major things. I want to work on protecting the independent pharmacies from the PBM abuse that's been taking place and making sure that independent pharmacies don't go away. Another goal I have is to strengthen the legislative presence that FPA has in Tallahassee and also federally. We have work to be done there as well. And then lastly, I want to make sure that FPA is a home for everybody. I want everybody to feel like FPA is here. We are here to fight for every person in pharmacy, every pharmacist, every technician, every student. I really want to go back to the roots of where FPA is kind of like that umbrella organization and that we're here to support everybody. I'm not against anybody joining other organizations and getting involved. Of course, if there's something that you want to specialize in and there's an organization that you feel passionate about, please join them as well. But don't forget that FPA is the parent organization and is kind of more like the one that's fighting for all of pharmacy. You can have your specific organizations, but FPA, we're here for everybody. An organization that I think will help with mentoring the students, mentoring new practitioners, and just a community where your colleagues, can get together and kind of work on pharmacy together. So we're investing in our relationships with the colleges across the state as well, because the future of the profession is in our students. So, and then the last thing I want to say about that is just that I want everybody to know that advocacy is not optional anymore. It's part of your job. I think it's something that we all have to do, so I think that us being unified on that front is what's going to make FPA successful and make pharmacy successful in the state of Florida.
I completely agree with everything you said. I think that was amazing. And, when I was president, I really felt strongly that FSHP and FPA, because they're the two largest, really should form that bond and work together as best they can. Do we have any plans to really help both organizations work well together this year?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's already been some background conversations on how we can do that. We've worked together legislatively over the past couple years. And again, there's from I get some pushback sometimes because there's different agendas and agenda items legislatively that one organization may be more fond of versus another. But the bottom line is that we have to work together. Because it's one profession and we're trying to, legislate for pharmacists. That's what we all are. We're pharmacists, we're pharmacy technicians, we're students. So we got to work together. So our plan is always to work together. The FPA door is always open for, collaborative, workings. And, another thing that FPA has also begun this year, we had an FPA just a month ago. We had our first FPA Legislative Summit. And that legislative summit was a coalition of all different organizations, not just like an FSHP. We had the rheumatologist, we had manufacturers, we had people from industry, we had AARP, the people representing the people and the patients that are out there. So we all started working together to see where we can collaborate on bills, where we can move things forward legislatively. So yes, we're all about collaboration at FPA, and we really want to, be able to move legislation forward, good legislation for our healthcare, for our patients, and that benefit the pharmacists and pharmacy technicians in Florida.
That's great to hear. Legislators don't understand the difference between any of all these organizations that we have. They just see us as pharmacists. So I love to hear that and really trying to be as united as we can. It's so important for all pharmacists. So, well, thank you. Um, so what are some upcoming events that FPA has? You talked about the summit. That's fantastic. What else is coming up that you'd like to share with the audience?
So there will be a second summit as well coming up. So we need to get even more,
That
part.
open to anybody? Like, how do they get involved with that?
Yeah, we're definitely going to put that information on the website, the floridapharmacy.org. We will put it on there, and it'll give an opportunity for we welcome change. We welcome everybody to participate anyone that has any stakeholders in pharmacy and even patient stakeholders, we welcome them all to get involved. So that information will be on our website, and then the second meeting will be coming up, prior to the legislative session beginning, so we can all get on the same page. As far as the legislative calendar, we haven't had our first board meeting yet. I mean, the regular calendar for the whole year. We haven't had our first board meeting yet, so we don't have.
Well, we're just coming off annual, which was a
Yeah.
bit tired. I'm sure it was amazing, but it was tiring.
Yeah, but what we do have, which we're just locked up, and you're probably the first that will hear, is about the legislative days that are coming up in March, April. So it looks like our legislative days are going to take place on March 30th through April 1st. So that's going to be the days.
I like that. I'm going to mark my calendar.
We're gonna have, like an evening of arrival on the 30th, kind of like a get together collaboration with everybody there. Maybe like a pizza policy night, kind of like we've done in the past with the students. The next day followed with visits with the legislators. The evening followed with a pack reception. And then the following day, we're going to bring back the health fair, which a lot of students have really,
Oh,
pushed
that's
for, and they want to see that come back. So we're going to bring that back for the health day, the health fair on Thursday. So that's for sure on the calendar. We're going to definitely have some more regional events this year with the local units as well. So please just, you know, periodically check back on the FPA website and look at our calendar of events, as I'm sure that will be filling up soon. It's just a little early right now for us to have that, published right now at this time.
right. And it's the year for the consultant license. So do you have any opportunities for people to get their consultant credit if they didn't make it to the annual meeting?
Yeah, yes, we will have another conference, towards the end of the fall or, early winter, but it will be before the credits are due in, December. So we will be working on something like that as well. There's also been a big push to do a lot more online and, platforms. So we are really heavily working on that. We're actually working on collaboration with a lot of the local units who are providing this to their members and trying to see if we can, streamline that and work together with the local units and get those CEs published on our website as well.
That's great. Good to hear.
Yeah.
And we have a new CEO, right? Uh, how's everything going? It's exciting time.
It's a very exciting time. Our new CEO, his name is Christian Malesic, and he's come to us from Dallas. He's just in the process, actually, of moving to Tallahassee, but we're super excited. I mean, he has a ton of association background experience. He's been championed as like a turnaround CEO, so
Oh,
it's something that we're super excited about. I mean, in the past, we've kind of, the different people that we've had in place recently didn't have as much association management experience and maybe a little bit more pharmacy experience. This time, we've chosen a CEO that really is primed to lead the association, help us with member engagement. And, we couldn't be more excited. I mean, he's super motivating. I've met with him several times already, and we're just really excited for the future. I think that he's going to do great things for us. And he's been around the state already on the move. I mean, he has been from Jacksonville to South Florida to Orlando. I mean, he's been traveling the entire state, meeting with the different FPA stakeholders and making sure everybody knows who he is. And also, he wants to gauge everybody's needs. And he's really, I think he's doing everything the right way from the get go and making sure that everybody's voices are heard. So I think that we can only look for good things coming from Christian and the association.
that's great. I think anybody who's listening knows that, especially after COVID, it seems organizations just struggled a little bit. We've seen the bounce back, which is nice. So, for our listeners, how can they provide feedback on what they'd like to see with the organization? Certainly, they need to get involved. That's, I think, first and foremost. Be a member. That's first because you can find out a lot. Sometimes you don't know just because you're not a member. You don't realize what all's going on. But after that, how can they provide feedback?
Well, I mean, yes, membership is key. And, we are going to be hosting different town halls throughout the year as well, where all members are able to voice concerns and voice, because I hear from all different members on different concerns, and like I mentioned before, that we want to be that voice for every pharmacist, every technician. So there's not one message that we don't want to hear about pharmacy. There's nothing too small, nothing too little that we don't want to tackle, we don't want to address. So, our emails are always open. They're available on the website. I'd be happy to hear from anyone, whether you're a member or you're not. Please reach out, and we'll be happy to address any concerns that you have. But the best way is to get involved, as you mentioned. That's the key, is to get involved and help us in our fight.
That's great. Thank you for sharing all that. So we know that you've been very involved legislatively throughout the years as a pharmacist. What's going on currently nationally that we should be aware of and maybe something we can help advocate for?
So this is a very exciting time. I mean, nationally, this was one of the biggest wins we had in years. Just happened in February this year, the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2026, which included real PBM reform. Some of the things that were passed in there were full rebate pass-through requirements, expanded federal oversight, and an any willing pharmacy provision. So currently, right now in the Medicare and federal landscape, and a pharmacy can be held out of network for no particular reasons, and beginning in 2028, as long as you meet the requirements of the plan, you're going to be allowed in the plan. So that was a huge win for us. Of course, we still don't have our any willing our pharmacist provider status yet, and that's of course what we're working on. We've been working on that, as you know, Carol, for
I mean,
you know
it's almost going back to when I was a student, and I'm not even going to talk about when I was a student because that was in the 1900s.
exactly.
So,
Yeah. When I was a student, it was the same. I mean, back in 2004, I'll tell you, that's when I graduated, and we talked about pharmacy, provider status for pharmacists, and it's still an ongoing conversation. And, I think we're closer than ever. I know we say that every year, but I really feel like we're closer than ever. So,
me
another one that's going through right now is it's HR 6610, which is the Pharmacist Fight Back bill. And that is another one that heavily regulates the lowering of drug prices, targeting PBMs. This bill also seeks to eliminate anti-competitive practices and hidden pricing schemes that are going on in the PBM world. The bill basically has four core principles: transparent pricing, banning patient steering. So right now, there's a lot of that going on where patients are being shifted to pharmacies that are owned by the PBMs. So it bans that. It also, finally has some big penalties for the actors that are participating in these practices. Not only will you get these fines, but a certain number of these fines, and you will just be eliminated from those networks. So, and those are some huge things. And then lastly, it's a mandatory 100% pass through of the rebates. So, this is what's going to help your patients that are walking through the door. And so these are some big pushes federally. And I know federally, coming up in the next session, we will have more provider status bills that we're going to be trying to move forward with as well.
I think that's great. I know patients wanna have a choice. They wanna be able to choose where they get their prescriptions, especially if they have a good relationship with a pharmacist. That's just so important. And so where do we stand this year in Florida? What are our priorities then with the FPA? Do they differ a little bit or some of them kind of overlapping?
They definitely overlap somewhat, but Florida's been super aggressive this year. We've delivered priority packets to every member of the House and Senate over this past term that was just took place before. We saw real movement on PBM accountability legislation, strengthening pharmacy appeal rights against PBMs. I don't know if you got to see, but just recently, the Attorney General had a press conference. Which I had the privilege of speaking at that press conference representing FPA, where we are basically putting some litigation together against CVS for, their practices in the state of Florida. So the attorney general has an appetite for this. He's taken a look at it and seen how it's affected patient access and, the way that patients receive healthcare in Florida. And he is not happy about it. And he wants to make sure that, patients are taken care of. So he feels like this is his avenue. He can get in anytime, these practices affect the patients in Florida. He's going to step in and make sure that, these are taken care of. So that's one of our priorities. We've been working with the attorney general very closely, and he's looking at not just only CVS, other, PBMs that are, doing the same practices. So he's told us that there's more lawsuits and things coming from the state, and they want to get this cleaned up in Florida. So we're working very closely with them on that. We have,
Are you
yeah,
seeing that also on the national front?
absolutely. Nationally, there's some states that have gotten some, amazing legislation that have passed. If Tennessee, for example, has been able to eliminate that vertical integration, how the PBMs are self-referring to their own clinics, their own pharmacies. So CVS was one of the ones that was banned from you have to make a choice. Either you want to be a PBM or you want to be a pharmacy. So as of right now, which they are fighting that back in litigation, but as of right now, CVS would have to close their pharmacies in Tennessee and only operate as a prescription benefit manager. So,
Oh, yeah.
that's up in courts, but it's a huge win. Arkansas has the same. So there's several states that are pushing for similar type of legislation, to protect the healthcare system. It's all here to protect patients, keep that patient access available to be able to go to the places you choose, as opposed to being forced to use specific entities because they are owned by the pharmacy, by the prescription benefit managers. A few other bills we're working yeah, a few other bills we're working on this year with the coalition we kind of been talking about is working on audit bills. A lot of pharmacies are having trouble with some of these predatory audits and things like that. So we want to get language in place to help pharmacies with that. We're also, of course, going to be working on bills that are going to be, seeking pharmacists reimbursement for services. I know that's, very exciting, and people, a lot of pharmacists want to see. This is something that the students have really pushed for. Something that was exciting this year at our House of Delegates this year was all the bills this year, all the resolutions this year, excuse me, were all presented by students.
That was
So it's
so great. That was
yeah,
so
it's
great.
just great to see, that the students are involved and they want to see, and advocate for their future. They are our future. So it's great to see that they see the importance of it and understand that, this reimbursement for pharmacy services would make a huge difference on their, you know, f- ability to practice in the future.
Right.
Also, there's a Medicaid carve out that the state we could possibly be working on. That's something that, some people have had an appetite for. And lastly, another collaborative bill that we could be working on. There's been talk about how to improve this prior authorization process that goes on in the state of Florida.
Yeah.
So many of us go through, so many of our patients have to go through these hoops of dealing with these prior authorizations, people waiting weeks, months, to get their medication that they need desperately approved.
Sometimes not even picking it up, and so then in the end, I mean, that they're just gonna end up back in the hospital and a lot of other issues down the line, so
Yeah,
yeah.
you know how it works for your hospital system. It's the same. We all see an independent pharmacy. I see so many patients that, are just not getting the proper care. The doctor has designated them to be on a specific medication, that's going to work best for them. And, it's just too many hoops to go through, especially when, we found another thing that was interesting that I found is that, you know, what we were thinking about that we could do is there's a subset of drugs that once they go through this prior authorization process that are approved 95% of the time. So why are we holding up these drugs that are approved 95% of the time? If there's, if people that are using drugs for off-label uses and need to be approved for something else, maybe those would be take a longer part in the process and more documentation. But if you're approving some of these drugs at a 95% rate, and it just becomes a holdup and a lack of care for patients. So I think that's something that we can work on as well.
Waste of time and money in healthcare to be going through all those hoops. It really is. We could be really taking care of patients with that time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, absolutely agree. Well, what can then pharmacists do? We talked a little bit about that, but hopefully we've put a fire under some people's, feet in regards to wanting to get more involved and do something. What can they do?
Get involved. I mean, that's the honest answer. Come to legislative days, contribute to the PAC, build a relationship with your local legislator. I talk about that all the time because I've been up in Tallahassee, been going there for the last almost 12 years straight, every single year, multiple times a year. And when I speak to legislators, a lot of times it's like, hey, but I just heard from this person for the first time now when it's crunch time and when you need something from me, you know, remember that if you build that relationship now, go visit your legislator at their local office. Don't wait until the call to action comes. Of course, we need you when that call to action comes, but build that relationship now. Talk to them now. See how you can help your legislator out, whether it's walking doors, whether it's helping them, locally in the community where, you don't necessarily have to travel up to Tallahassee. You could just work in your own neighborhood and that kind of relationship building goes a long way, you know, because legislators, when they hear from their constituents, it's much different than when they hear from the lobbyists. So, I hear that all the time and I think it's real. These are the people that they've been elected in office to represent. They want to hear from you, but they don't want to hear from you for the only time when you need something.
Right? We've got elections coming up. So I think this is a good time to be able to reach out and talk to people. And I'll hear from like especially new grads. Oh, I just don't have a lot of money right now, and we get that. So it's either money or time. If you don't have the money right now, that's fine. Give your time, or vice versa. If you don't have time, then if you've got a little bit to spare, give a little money. Let somebody else do it. So it's just so important. I think it's almost like an insurance policy for our profession. If we want to see our profession move forward, if we want to make sure that our profession does what it can do to help people and really help our patients, we have to do this. So thank you. Really appreciate that. And is there anything you want to share in regards to independent pharmacy? It's flu season, right? Or it's coming up. So what do you want to share in that regard?
This is my favorite time of the year, to be honest with you. I mean, it's an opportunity to really engage with your patients, show off some of those pharmacy services that you offer. I know during this times, when flu season, we really ramp up. We get a ton of patients that come in, even patients that don't use my pharmacy regularly, but ever since COVID, we've become like that go-to place. I was lucky in the beginning of COVID, I had the opportunity to work with one of the local hospital healthcare systems. So I was one of the first people to have the COVID vaccines in my pharmacy. So during that time period, I was given like couple thousand doses, and I was able to really build a relationship with the community. And that's gone such a long way. I mean, people still visit me year after year, and I'm able to talk to them about all the different services that we offer, the different, test and treat, all the different things that we can do as pharmacists. So it's really opened their eyes and people really, they capitalize on that. They really appreciate the opportunities there and they take advantage of all the different things that you can offer. One of the unique things that my pharmacy was able to do, and this is something maybe the students would, every time I tell the students, they really, their ears perk up about a different avenue in pharmacy that they never thought of. So I was able to partner with a long-term care pharmacy during COVID. So ever since then, I still to this date, every time around this season, I traveled to between 50 and 100 different assisted living facilities across the state. So I do a road show as soon as
Wow.
this all starts between September, October, all the way through November. And I go to 50 to 100 different assisted living facilities providing vaccinations for COVID, flu, shingles, RSV, pneumonia, every single thing, no matter what the vaccine is. If we offer it, I bring it and we provide those vaccination services to the assisted living facilities. And it's been such a great learning experience. You get to speak to this population who's so appreciative that you come out to them. And, it's just been an amazing experience. So it's just a different opportunity that, the pharmacy profession has brought to me. I've vaccinated cruise ships. I was on
Oh,
cruise ship
wow.
vaccinating the cruise ship staff because these guys come into port for one day. So it was very cool experiences, all these different things that pharmacy has brought to me. I vaccinated the Florida Panthers hockey
Oh,
team, went
wow.
to their, practice facility, vaccinated the whole team. So it's just some really cool experiences that I've been able to have, getting involved with vaccines. So those are some cool things that I like to share. I think it's something that the students especially get excited about.
Yeah, that is really cool. And, we haven't really talked on this show about it, but, working in an assisted living facility, I think in long-term care, that's another really cool, avenue for patients that you bring up. They're so appreciative, like you said. And even if you don't work there, just going and visiting them as pharmacists, sometimes they don't get a lot of visitors. It's just nice. We'll bring students sometimes and do like brown bags for assisted living and that sort of thing. And it's always such an amazing experience, but yeah. Well, thanks for sharing all of that, and, anything else you'd like our listeners to know before we end our podcast? This has been fabulous.
Just, I just want everybody to know that the fight for pharmacy, for independent pharmacy, I feel like it's winnable. Okay. We're seeing real proof of that this year so far in 2026. And with the bills that are coming up, we just need everybody to stay engaged. We need everybody to get involved. Join FPA if you haven't. Show up to an event. Don't underestimate the power of your own voice. People don't realize, that the change in this profession has never come from waiting quietly. It always comes from the voices of people that are showing up, telling their stories. Talk to your patients. Remember, your patients can be your biggest advocates. I try to get my patients involved in the legislative, you know, um, things that we're fighting in the state. Every single year it comes up. I talk to my patients about that. I go over their EOBs. I have them bring it in. We talk about because they don't realize it. They just see that hey, somebody's getting paid here, and they feel like the money's going out. And I show them, hey, look, the pharmacy got paid 25 cents on this prescription. Do you think that that's something that with all the time that we spend together, do you think that that's a reasonable amount? No. So, they don't realize it unless you tell them. You got to, get your patients involved and let them know what you're dealing with because a lot of times they don't know and they want to be your advocate. So, I just recommend that everybody out there, get involved and don't forget about your patients. Let them get involved for you and help you as well in this big fight that we have.
Great points. Absolutely. And like you said, I love that your theme really is united in pharmacy. I think that's awesome. Um, I think we're gonna have a great year with you as president. That is fantastic. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
sharing all of that. So thank you for joining the podcast, really promoting and protecting our profession. Um, Anything else you wanna say, last minute words?
I just want to say thank you so much for having me on and everyone who's listening for your different colleges of pharmacy and everybody. I will be traveling the state as well, and I hope to see you all and hear from you all. Remember, my door is always open, my email is open. Please contact me, and I'd be happy to get back to you. Thanks again, Carol, for having me on.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for taking the time. And thank you to our listeners as well. We appreciate that you support the show. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast as well as the YouTube channel. And take care, everyone.